Hi, you've reached the voicemail of Hannah Brett with Connect Call. Just leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks.
1 for more options.
Hey, Hannah. I just want to thank you again for helping us find the right people and the right providers to help getting my son in the right facility with the right care. And now he's doing some extended and treatment, and they're looking at maybe possibly returning to school. And I just feel like I've done therapy and I've done some family therapy, but I'm kind of still doing the same things I always do. And I am hitting a wall every time. And I guess, what I've learned is how to ask for help, but I want to ask for help and do something different. And I don't know what different is. So I was hoping that maybe you could give me a call back and give me some ideas. Somebody just maybe helping me with the day-to-day. I don't know, but you could just call me back. That'd be great.
Hi, this is Hannah Brett with another episode of Connect Call, where I often say, I'm afraid to say this in front of you, actually, but I'm going to say it. So I needed a tagline, Joelene. So here's my tagline. I often say I don't have a clinical background, but I do have a PhD for picking up for the phones. Wait,
Wow.
take two. See, I'm already so nervous with you. I don't have a clinical background, but I do have a PhD for picking up the phones for families in crisis.
Didn't you?
Because it really is what I do. I mean,
it is what you do.
Because I was saying, my imposter syndrome, and then we're going to introduce the guest, everybody. But my imposter syndrome told me for so long that I wasn't an expert because I didn't have letters behind my name. And
Sure.
I remember I had a coach that I worked with, a different type of coach. She was like a story coach. And she said, actually, you are an expert. Very few people have the honor of being on the other end of the phone for these families and doing the work that you do, And so I thought to myself, I do have a PhD.
I am an expert in picking up the phone.
In picking up the phone and loving people till they love themselves. Hi, this is Hannah Brett. Another episode of Connect Call. I gotta say, and I'm sorry to my other guests, but I'm going to say it. This is Joelene Knight, someone that I first have to say, if I could have, I begged basically to do this podcast with me from the beginning. It was you and it was Kelly. I really wanted to do it with you guys, but you're both so busy. So I'm just grateful that she is a guest. Joelene Knight, and I'm going to talk a little bit about her bio, and then I'm going to explain my love for her. But Joelene Knight brings over 34 years of experience in behavioral health, addiction, and recovery fields. She has held executive and clinical leadership roles at Promises and ARC in Los Angeles before co-founding Grace Recovery in 2018. I'm just going to say, Joelene is the OG, everybody. When you're in the business of the industry of helping people, there are people, and I don't mean to age you. You are just
you can age me.
You're a gangster. Joelene is on the front lines from the beginning, and she was in Los Angeles, and she's done so much amazing work in helping so many people find recovery, find just becoming their best selves. And I've worked with Joelene now for, how many years have I worked with you in the field?
8, 10, 9.
Okay.
9.
So Joelene, on this show, I tell people that I am a connector and I'm a collector of sorts. And I do believe that I meet people and sometimes it's just electric. I just know, wow, they're special. And I know that's how you felt when you met me. But when I met you, immediately I felt two things. One, we were robbed of time. And two, that you were such a force. I could tell, I knew this was your path you wanted your loved ones to be in front of Joelene and Joelene to be a part of anything she could help to help them. Right.
Thanks.
So Hannah. I'm really just grateful that you're on the show and I love you so much.
I love you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And, and we won't even talk about Joelene. I won't even get into well, that's another show for another time, but Jolene has a really, really fun past too. She auditioned to be a fly girl
I sure did.
on In Living Color.
I sure did. And
Yeah,
yet here
so
I sit
many
as a family
talents.
coach.
As a family coach. So the reason why I wanted to bring Jolene on the show today is, and this is a really good question. You know, I think a big reason, again, why I do this show is to let people know that there isn't one size for all. There isn't one process, one road to get to your best self, right?
Right.
And I have tried everything, I think. And so I want to like show everybody stuff I've tried and all the resources that are out there. And I don't want to naysay anything and say that's bad and this is good.
Right.
What I do try to highlight are obviously the good providers and some of the people maybe to stay away from in programs and things like that. But something I've come across a lot in the work that we do is, should I get a therapist or should I have like a life coach or parent coach or family coach? And I'll say it. When I first started hearing the word coach, I was like, oh God, this is for people who like, you know, because I'm also like, again, I've said this on the show before, this industry, like any other industry, there's a lot of good people and there's a lot of bad people. But it was just, I just, like, I didn't know enough and understand the coach piece and know how to find the right coach and what, and that's why I'm having you on the show. But what I have learned is, and we will talk about this, is, you know, I have a coach and a therapist now for myself, but so you don't have to pick one or the other. But can you just like start from the beginning? Like if somebody's asking, like, what is traditionally a coach and compared to a therapist?
Right. I mean, I can speak for myself. I
For
think that there's a
yourself.
lot of different aspects of life coaching and parent coaching and spiritual coaching.
Correct.
And my differentiating factor between a parent coach, a family coach, a life coach, and a therapist is I provide real-time practical solutions for issues that families are facing, whether they have an adult child that has mental health issues or substance use disorder or an adolescent, or whether it's a spouse who's navigating those same issues with their spouse. It's real time. And
Can I interrupt and explain that to
yeah,
the listeners and viewers? When we say
yeah.
real time, and I don't know if people are out there listening and watching, but I know I have felt this with my therapist. I see my therapist, you know, once every 2 weeks, whatever, for that hour, right? She's got great boundaries. That's all we do. There have been many times, right, where I'll be in a conversation with my dad or with someone in real time and say, how should I draft this text? Or how can I do this differently? And I have to wait to the next time I see my therapist to ask. So I think what you're touching on, which I love, and tell me if I'm wrong, is when you have a coach, you're able to utilize that in real time and ask sometimes.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I think the therapeutic and clinical process is such an important piece, especially with families and parents, because that work is required to kind of unpack some of the ickiness that carries through when they're faced with navigating the challenges of their own children.
Right.
But that's not me. My job and my role, and I think what I find is really important, is being able to look at what's happening in the moment. This isn't about me getting into, you know, past experiences of their own childhood and how that impacts them. This is, you know, your kid is, you know, trashing the house right now and they're actively using. You feel backed into a corner. The fear is paralyzing. You can't breathe and you don't know what to do in that moment.
Right.
I think that there's been an evolution of case managers and therapists, and you know, there's oftentimes
And
treatment
we're going to do an
providers.
episode on what case management is too, as well.
Okay, lovely.
Okay.
but therapists and treatment providers, and there's
Right.
so many people involved.
Right.
And what I've discovered is a lot of times when families come to me, they're being referred by their therapist. That is the bulk of
Which is great.
the clients that I get to work with is, and a lot of times it's therapist frustration because they're spending so much time trying to mitigate the anxiety of the families that they're not able to do the work that they
Good
are
point.
intended to do, right, with their client. And
Right.
so those referrals, when they come to me, it's a beautiful collaborative experience because it really allows me as a parent coach or a family coach or whatever kind of coach you want to call me,
Right.
um, to be able to just work with the family. And by doing so, it provides the clinical team the opportunity to work with their client in a really meaningful way
Right.
that doesn't require putting out a bunch of fires to
Right.
ease the family's anxiety.
And we will talk on this. I think, and I thought this too in the beginning. A lot of times, young adults or even adults, or people get scared of the word therapist, and so coach wasn't as scary, and so
Right.
people may go in that direction first. But in my experience, and yours as well, I
Mhm.
would think everyone can do what they want, but I think the ideal situation with people a lot of times, and we'll get you there,
Mhm.
is ideally, and this isn't for everybody, but ideally is that individual has their clinical needs met by their
Mhm.
therapist, but then also is working with a coach. And a green flag and knowing that you're working with the right people is they want to collaborate and not
Right.
compete. Okay.
Right.
You want to say something? I feel like.
Well, I was just thinking about it because the other piece of it is sometimes I'll get families that they have done the work. They have
Right. You're right.
done
Good point.
long-term therapy and
They need something different.
they and it's not even so much about needing something different as much as it is a continuation of, okay, they've unpacked all the bullshit that they needed to unpack,
Right.
and now they need to put it into practical application. That's really the way that I view coaching. It's practical application. It's not just this theory of, well, you have to let go, or the
It's
catchphrases,
yes.
you're enabling and you have to have boundaries. This is the practical application
Where
and the
it's
way that
like,
I
have a
work.
good day, be
Yeah.
kind to yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
Do
Be
something.
kind to yourself. Be well.
See you
Be
next
well.
week.
Yeah. Be well.
I often like to do movie references, as you know. And so what I
Hmm.
think of a coach is, do you ever see the movie Roxanne?
No, I need you to tell me like who you see me as in a coach, but in a movie that I actually know what it is.
Jolene, I think so highly of you. You're like Al Pacino. I mean, you are the Jolene's the GOAT, by the way, for people who don't know. She has like quite a
Oh,
following, but Jolene has a way. You do, like, you say jump and we all say how high. But let me think. I have to think about that. Yeah,
yeah, you
you
have
are.
to circle back to it.
But Jolene is that person when you speak, it's like in Braveheart and the background music's going and the
Oh,
monologue.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, I
You
like
feel
that.
that? Your
Okay.
horse,
Yeah.
you're right,
Yeah.
getting the troops going.
I love you. I want to marry you. I always have.
Oh God, I love you more. So here's also one I want to touch on with the coaching and the therapist and all that. Um, I'm a little biased. I'm going to say right out the gate because I've worked with a lot of quote unquote people that say they're parent coaches. Okay, and naysayers out there, all 28 of you that are out there listening. No, I'm kidding. I really am going to get this following. Please subscribe, everybody, and download. Thank you. Is how do I say this? A lot of people, unfortunately, it's not. I feel like they think, okay, now that I have
Just
people
say it. Why are you trying to be
who
politically
don't.
correct?
I didn't ask you this question in the beginning, and this is what's going to show you your skin in the game. I believe everybody I talk to and work in this field and the good providers, they're here for a reason, and they've kind of either personally been through the trenches or have watched the
Mhm.
trenches or have worked in the trenches. I want to get back, and I will circle back to why you got into this. But for me, a parent coach and somebody that I will look to, especially in this behavioral health piece and walking through this, it is important to me that that person has worked either in treatment or has experience actually in addiction and mental health. You don't need all the credentials, but what I because I as someone who's also a helper, you don't want to be having to not only educate the family, but educating the coach, right? And so
Yeah.
I feel that I've come up against parent coaches sometimes who just really don't even understand what we're dealing with, or still use the word troubled teen, or, we have a spirited child, and I'm just like, so maybe those are people I wouldn't work with all due respect. But to get back to you and why and just can you just quickly tell me, because we didn't talk about this in the beginning,
Yeah.
why are you here? Why did you become this helper of helperness?
I mean, this part of my career or journey or whatever
Right.
um was not on my bingo card.
Mhm.
I started working in treatment in 1991, and treatment was very different at that time. I've seen, the good, the bad, and the ugly of it over 3 decades. Um and I made a decision, to continue down that path because it was meaningful and it was important.
Right.
And then it became a little bit unrecognizable. Once I think this is my TED Talk rant, but I think
Do it.
once it became something that had so much monetary gain attached to it
Right.
is when you started to see, the venture capitalists and the big investment firms coming
Right.
in and buying up, the small mom and pop treatment programs, where there was a time, certainly in the 90s and, early 2000s, where there wasn't a treatment center on every corner, and
Right.
families weren't left to navigate who the good players were, who the bad players were. And so, in that process, I was talking to families constantly in a treatment setting. Oftentimes I was that first, answer of, my loved one is, running the streets. They have an opioid addiction and we don't
And
know
by
what
the
to
way, we
do.
can't name names and we won't, but Jolene has worked with some major heavy hitters, by the way. She has a lot of experience. Continue.
Thank you. Um, and And I was hearing, these families that were in such extraordinary distress.
Right.
And it didn't really matter what program I worked for. There was always the missing piece of the family component.
Correct.
Kind of the standard is you go to a family weekend, um, 2 or 3 days, and you do intensives. And then your loved one is going to come home or return back to where they live. And that family weekend is trying to kind of undo, for an adult, 30, 40, sometimes 50 years of experience of, the intertwined components of that
Yeah.
dynamic.
Right.
And it started out very how I got here in 2022, I made a decision to step away from working in the treatment world. I had always had a very small, group of clients and families that had been referred to me through the years. And it would be
Right.
one of those, hey, can you work with the wife of a guy that I've got in my sober living? That
Right.
type of thing. And I just learned a long time ago, say yes. You never know where you're supposed to be. And so
Right.
there would be a series of saying yes. And I kept a really small practice of people that I worked with that in some way or another were impacted by mental health or substance use disorders within their family circle, be it a dad or a spouse. And so in 2022, when I made the decision to step out of working in treatment, um, not to sound like hokey, but, I was really asking for like the guidance from the spirit world or the universe to present to me where I'm supposed to be next. Yes, I've been in this industry for a long time. Theoretically, I call myself semi-retired. Um, but what kept showing up was, hey, I've got a really good friend that I grew up with, and their husband is
Yeah.
in treatment and they're getting ready, to come home, and the wife doesn't know what to do. And then it was, we have mom and dad of an adult child that, you know, is really struggling, or an adolescent that was, had all of the diagnoses, oppositional defiance disorder, ADHD, they're all of these things. And the families were just left with, but how do we do day-to-day life?
Right.
How do we navigate in this? And what started to come to fruition was the right people were being, presented to me. And what I realized was these were families that had been fed so many opinions and so many rigid, hard lines, most of which had multiple treatment experiences with their loved one. And, they were being told, if you let them come home, you're signing their death certificate, or you have no boundaries and you have to have boundaries, or you're enmeshed, or,
Read this book.
you're read this book, you're
You're right.
codependent.
Right.
And those words got thrown around so much. And really what I came to realize is, you know, you never stop being a parent. You never stop, whether your kid is, an adolescent or an adult. The job description is changing, and it's being written generally by somebody who is either, you know, suffering themselves, or their adolescence and their brain is still under construction.
Right.
And that really what they needed was to be asked, how uncomfortable are you willing to be?
Right.
How uncomfortable are you willing to be?
Right.
And if they were not willing to be uncomfortable, that had to be okay for them.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that have to put their heads down at night. And they're the ones that have to be willing to follow those things through. I love what I do. I love the ability to work with families and to coach them through these challenges, and then to watch the transition in the
Right.
families, right? It's different because mine was so client focused,
Right.
and so this has been a completely different perspective for me.
Yeah.
And it's really been being able to hope for the families that regardless of what happens with their loved ones, that
Yes.
they find some ease, that
Yes.
they're able to move through the world with an element of peace and understanding.
Right. And I want to just,
So
go on.
I was just going to say, I don't know if that answered your question. It was a
did
really
beautifully.
long-winded answer.
And I have so much to say, and that's also my ADHD, but I've always said, people refer to people in this field, right? It's
Right.
not the program. It's really this feeling you get from people, right? And because, I try on this show to say, these are the green flags, these are the red flags.
Mhm.
But there's just sometimes this, you want people in your corner that are going to fight the good fight. I was watching something this morning, and I talk about this on another episode because everybody's, I'm sure, I don't know if you're watching, but this whole Lindsay Clancy case. And what's riveting, if you don't know about the case, what's riveting about this case is, without knowing the case, is there's a woman who has never been heard for her postpartum psychosis. Fortunately, she killed her children, and she is on, basically they're deciding if she's going to be in the hospital for the rest of her life or go to prison. The point is, her defense attorney is this guy named Kevin Reddington, who has taken the internet by storm. And he has, because he's this 75-year-old guy
Mhm.
who sees her, hears her, advocates for her is in her ear, holding
Mhm.
her hand, walking through this, right?
Mhm.
And why I'm talking about him is, in the work we do with mental health and with addiction, you know, you want obviously the best therapist and the best treatment, but you also want that coach who's gonna advocate for you and fight for you
Mhm.
and be in the trenches kind of with you and
Mhm.
get it. And that's who you are, Jolene. I mean, and that's what I was trying to say is like there's uh the real good coaches out there, the people out there are the ones who see you and also will help you make uh the shifts and changes that are being spoken about also in family therapy, that are being
Mhm.
spoken about in therapy. I think everybody, and I see this with my friends, I see it with myself,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
when we think it's just easy to change something we do or change how we love somebody or change how,
Right.
you know what I mean? And when I
I
when I
do.
when I think about that, I always think about, the first person who broke my heart. And every time I wanted to text them after they broke up with
Mhm.
me, I would text a friend of mine first, and she would help
Mhm.
me draft a text or make
Right.
me think of before I would always it was just innate, this
Mhm.
is I want to text, this is how I want to love this unhealthy whatever. And
Right.
so for me, what a coach is they're kind of, I mean, we're not going to abuse their power and talk to them 24/7, but
Right.
they are applying in real time these
Mhm.
situations where, and I want to ask you, like, when a family does hire you, right?
Mhm.
And because what I'm, and by the way, if I could give every friend of mine, Joelene Knight as a coach, I would as a gift. And I'm not just saying this because you're my friend. You are like
I mean, you kinda have.
I mean, kind of put your kids through college. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But I do. I think you're just one of the very special ones.
Thanks, Hannah.
And because you are an incredible mother, okay, first and foremost. And you also you've dedicated your life to this work and know what it takes. And when we talk about coaching, and I think what you really love to do is coach these families and showing them maybe how to, and we just did an episode with the family piece and loving differently and
Mhm.
not tough love and all this kind of stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
Kelly Grant and I were talking about,
Mhm.
doing families, asking these families to do these tiny shifts is
Mhm.
virtually impossible most of the time.
Mhm.
You know, like I gave an example
Yeah.
where we had a young woman who was in treatment who, God bless her, she was diagnosed as borderline, would make these
Mhm.
grand announcements every time she
Mhm.
was leaving treatment. And every time
Mhm.
she would leave, she would call mom and dad immediately. Mom and dad would
Mhm.
pick up the phone, and then we were back, and it was repeat,
Right.
repeat, repeat. And so we kept saying to the parents, and you would think it'd be easy, but it's not.
Mhm.
I'd say just for the next like hour, don't pick up the phone, or
Mhm.
3 hour.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And
Right.
they couldn't do it.
Mhm.
And it was like we needed a Jolene to
Right.
say, just stay with them,
Mhm.
because the treatment and case management and all that can help, but like
Right.
to help them actually do these shifts, try these
Mhm.
shifts out,
Mhm.
and so give me like a good example, when you're working with a family, what's a good example that for people out there listening where you've helped maybe differently than maybe a therapist. Like
Mhm.
therapists will do the clinical work, but just
Right.
can give me an everyday situation that you may deal with in the
Yeah,
coaching
I
you do.
mean, my phone is full of screenshots of, um, text exchanges between families and, you know, their adult children or their adolescents. That is, this is what they just texted me. How do I respond to this?
Right.
I'm not a case manager.
Right.
And I'm always really transparent with families when I get a call, which is I am by no means a replacement for therapy.
No. Yep.
Um, Therapy is an important component to this. I
Yes.
like working in a collaborative effort. I mean, if I have my absolute best case scenario, it is The client's in therapy, the family's in therapy, the family is working with me as a coach,
Right.
and then there's a family therapist who is conducting family therapy.
Thank you. I
That
talk about this all the
my
time. Build that
yeah,
army, okay?
yeah,
If you can.
that's my sweet spot,
Yeah.
is because then you're covering all the bases.
Right.
And and so really it's my role is I have some families that meet with me several times a week, and all of my families know that I'm reachable. Does that mean that I'm reachable 24/7 and I'm going to get back to you right away? No. It means
Right.
oftentimes I have 10 minutes in between clients and I can respond to a text message, or if need be, I can get on a call.
Right.
And really, trying to, because the other piece of it that I want to talk about is my goal is not for families to be dependent on a family coach. My
Right.
goal is for families to be able to take the information, what they're willing to sit through in terms of being uncomfortable, and go out and try it out and come back and
Yes.
say, I gave it a good college try and it didn't work out. And we can look at it and shift it and adjust it. And ultimately for them to trust themselves, because I think that, with families that have had, loved ones in multiple treatment programs, most of them are coming to me really defeated. And the messaging that they've gotten is that it's their fault, that they did this, that their continued enabling, for lack of a better
Right.
word,
Right.
or lack of boundaries
Right.
has resulted in this. And
Right.
so they're coming to me feeling pretty broken.
Right.
And that's not to say that there isn't truth to that, but those dynamics are a much bigger picture.
Right.
Being a parent, and I'm just speaking about the parents because I do work with spouses and I work with, a lot of women that are navigating empty nest and, what that looks like and hormone shifts and what does the second half of my life look like. But when I'm talking about, parents specifically,
Right.
being a parent is primal. It is a primal role, whether you want it or not. Your kid is in danger. You are going to get in front of that danger and do everything that you can to try to save them. And so, a lot of times, what we're asking families to do is to fight a primal response to
So
protecting their
true.
children. And, you brought up, just for an hour, don't answer the phone call with, the family you were talking about. I've kind of discovered that sometimes it's easier for families to practice outside of their kid or their loved one. Like, could you practice this at work with somebody that keeps whatever speaking to you
That's a
in a
good
way that's,
idea.
derogatory, and
Yes.
it doesn't feel good for you with the way that they're talking to you? Would you be willing to say to them, the way you're talking to me makes me uncomfortable? I'd rather have a conversation where it isn't so contentious,
Oh, I love that.
because they're willing to practice that sometimes. And that gives them enough courage
Right.
to have that conversation with their loved one.
Right.
So,
That's a really
this
good idea,
is,
and I love that you said that. To practice in
thanks.
other
I have them.
you have
I
some.
have them sometimes.
And as you were talking, I want to stress, like, when I have also utilized Jolene, it hasn't always been like families in crisis, and kids
Right.
in treatment, or, husband is this and that, or wife
Right.
is this and that. It's really about, a lot of times when I've had colleagues, friends, or families or people just come to me, is they're on this hamster wheel, right? They
Yeah.
just keep doing the same thing, getting the same results. And they just know that they have to do something differently and need help
Right.
to do that differently. And like,
Right.
a good example of that, which I see, and listen, I'm not a mom, so I can't sit here and say how I'd mom. I know I couldn't be a mother because I would be the one sleeping in the crib, checking the breathing. And I mean, as I sit here, I joke, like I tell people, it's like, don't pick up the phone yet if my dog is in a
Yeah.
crate for longer than 3 minutes crying, I'm like,
Mhm.
stop. I can't do a
Yeah.
cry out. Anyway, my point is this, is that a lot of times, what we've seen in years and years and years is this
Mhm.
kind of different type of parenting a little bit, where it's this
Mhm.
like gentle parenting, they call it,
Mhm.
or whatever.
Mhm.
But it's even like getting a parent to practice like, hey, uh, you know, um, I had a really good thought
D-
there. I was like, hey,
And it's gone.
and no, but like my kid is talking to me really bad, and
Mhm.
swearing at me and just being a jerk. And like,
Mhm.
how do you actually, you know, talk to them differently where they know that
Mm.
that's not okay? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like little shifts to get
Mhm.
different. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but
No, I mean, I do. And I think that that's the other piece of it is, you know, I would say, most of the parents I'm working with are somewhere between 40 to 70,
okay.
right? That's a big age span.
Right.
And the world that we grew up in is not the world that
No, it's
our
not.
young adult or adolescents or even 30-year-olds
Right.
have grown up with. And
Right.
so what worked for us back then does not necessarily work for us today. It here's the other thing is I think, and this is an opinion, that it is really easy for providers to tell families what they have to do or what they should do.
So true.
It is really easy
Yeah.
to say that. I'm guilty of it until I had kids of my own,
Right.
until I was faced with my own challenges. And
Yeah.
I went, oh, that actually doesn't work.
Well, you just have to
It,
think
it,
in your real life, do you try shifting something you do with your partner or with
right.
how you
Yeah.
mom, So go
So
on. Yeah.
I think that's, that piece of it is it's so easy
So
to
true.
just, kind of spout
Mhm.
without consideration. And my goal as a coach is to operate with consideration, considering
Can you say that
what
again?
the
Because I
family
really
is
like that.
going. My goal as a coach is to operate with consideration.
You said something before with the
Consideration.
operation, so I thought that sounded good. But did
I
you?
don't remember. Really, I don't know. I said cooperation and it rhymes with operation.
Okay. I thought we had a zinger. We don't.
We don't.
Continue, but it's true.
And so I think that that's where, coaching can be beneficial for
Right.
families is to, try to disseminate the information that they've had and really look at, okay, like what is working and what isn't, and what
Yes.
do you want? What is your
Mm.
hope?
Mm.
And that piece of it, I think, is really important.
And I think, thank you. And I think what I've also learned with myself, with people that I also try to connect the dots and find therapists and coaches for, is as a human, you have to say to yourself, and it's really hard for people to do, and say, my way isn't working. This is
Mhm.
not working. I've
Mhm.
read every book. I've gone to every support group. I need to do something differently. And
Mhm.
and it's okay, and
Mhm.
I talk about it on this episode, on this podcast, about how I got here and my story. And I say, I'm fortunate and I own it and I love it that in the worst of times I have, and the best, but in the worst of times, I have this army, a
Mhm.
village of people that
Right.
are going to help me through anything and everything. And that's my therapist. And that
Mhm.
is my coach, by the way. And I need to stress Joelene Knight helped me find my coach, because I was kind of on this hamster wheel myself with my mental health,
Yeah.
with my marriage, with my
Mhm.
life, with my day to
Mhm.
day. And I was like, I'd be crying to her as a friend. And she's
Mhm.
like, let's try something differently. And
Mhm.
I think, and you helped me find the best person to walk me through this
Mhm.
journey, and
Mhm.
do it differently. And I think what you touched on is so true. I think it's so important for families to hear this because I think they think, there's all this shame that, when a provider says, just don't pick up the phone, don't be ready to, give them money or do this or do that. And then we're like, all right, we'll see you next week. It's so much easier said than done. And I think like any new behavior and any new, you got to practice it, and you need someone coaching you. And I don't know. I just know that every person that I've put in your world or I've connected with the right coach has this feeling of being empowered, feeling brave, feeling seen, and feeling so proud of themselves because they are like, and it's so different than going to a therapist. It's just like, because I think, and we stress this on all the episodes, I think, when we're talking about someone, if we're talking about the person who goes into treatment, we're like, it's not just the client or the patient. Everyone has to change. And that's really hard to do, right?
Yeah.
We're kind of like, like I used to say to my mom, stop focusing on what my dad isn't and like how he sucks and this, that, and the other. And sorry, Dad, if you're listening. But like my mom would, and she'd focus on that. And she loved that role. That's what her role was, to focus on that. And to ask her to do that differently was really difficult,
The other piece of it, you were talking about like green flags and red flags.
Yes, that's what I want to get into, is what to look for.
And I think that it's very unique to the person. I think it's super unique to what somebody is looking for.
Right.
I think a green flag is a coach that is willing to say, this is beyond my scope. And I think it's probably important for you to work with a therapist.
Thank you.
And then let's touch base down the line. I'm really big on that. If I will always do, a consult call with people, and I usually know within the first couple minutes if it's going to be the right fit for them.
And if they need the therapist and the coach, and I love that you said that, because I have worked with coaches where I'm like, guys, this is so outside the work you're.
I know my lane. I like to stay in my lane. I am not a therapist.
And you guys should be complimenting each other.
And there are amazing therapists out there. But I think that's a green flag, is, a coach that is willing to say, this is my lane. I'm going to stay in it. This is beyond my scope.
Right.
And not taking on something really for financial gain or
My
to monetize
therapist
families.
Loves my coach, by the way. Like she's like, I've seen changes in you. I love how he is helping you, and like she like gets it. And that's the other thing. Like whoever you're hiring, that's also a green flag. You want to hire people, whether it's case management, and we'll talk about that on another episode, interventionists, all these people you're going to hire who want to collaborate as a team. If people are like saying, no, I can do everything, that's kind of a red flag. What are some, if you've got somebody just starting from the beginning on like, how do I find the right coach, or like, what are some other things to look for maybe?
Well, I mean, I think starting with, what is the intention of getting a coach? And the intention may just be, my therapist told me I needed to get a coach.
Yeah, right. Okay,
right.
Sure.
But I think giving, families an opportunity to really look at what do they want to get out of it.
Right.
I think that's a big piece of it. Not just going into it kind of blindly, but really, really having an understanding. What is your goal and your intention? Is it to, just deal with this crisis situation? Right? Because that's another piece of it, is I do have families that they come to me, they're in the peak of crisis, the crisis subsides, they go away, the crisis comes back, they come back. My hope, right, is that whenever a family is looking to work with a coach, that they're at least willing to make a commitment to see it through, and not just when there's a crisis situation.
Yes.
right?
Hold
Because
on.
the difference.
Say that louder for the people in the back, because I come across this all the time.
This level of consciousness can't be duplicated. So if I say something good, it's usually a one-time deal.
So what Joelene said, and I'm going to stress it, is this, and I say this with therapy because this drives me crazy. I have a family member. I'm not going to say who it is. He's the younger generation, and it's only in crisis this delicious human being calls me, right? And it's like I want, like, um the therapist, the coaches, all of that, you know, I think, it has this stigma that everything you hire these people, obviously you're going to ask for help when you need help, but
Sure.
and, but it doesn't have to, you shouldn't be finding people like this in crisis ideally, but you also should be utilizing these people, it's not like, okay, you just got me through that. Now we're done and I don't need to,
Right.
and, thanks for all that and getting me brave and we'll talk again. You know what I mean? I think, it's kind of like the analogy with chemo, and I hate using it, but I do. It's only with mental health that it's just
Right.
like, we wouldn't be like, all right, well, I feel better. And as the doctor says that, the cancer is being receptive to the chemo. So I guess I'm just going to stop chemo right now. Right. We're
Right.
not doing that,
Right.
and go on.
Well, but it goes back to what I said earlier, which is I don't want families that are dependent on coaching. I want them
Course.
to be able to get
Of
out
course.
and have those experiences.
Of course.
But generally, people are not coming to me because all is well and the world is utopia.
course.
There's some type of external motivating factor. But the goal is once that crisis subsides, because you're operating in a very different state of mind and things reach an element of homeostasis, is to do the work so that when and if the crisis hits again, it doesn't change the crisis, but the families have more tools because they've remained engaged and invested. And I think, a coach is really personal. Yes, a therapist also very personal. And I will often say, listen, there are other great coaches out there. And, you should probably talk to a couple of people before you make a
Yes,
decision.
that's another green flag, you guys. I got a thumbs up on my, I don't even know how that happened. You have tattoos on your hand? Nice to meet you. Go to the other hand. Go to the other hand. I never knew that.
No, I keep my hands down. I keep
Okay.
them down.
what
But yeah, I
was,
think that's to answer your question,
you want to
what
look at
families should
options.
ask. Look at options.
Yes,
Have
please.
a conversation. Have a
Yes.
conversation. The families are going to know, okay, this feels okay for me.
Right.
I'm going to let them know, listen, I'm super straightforward. I'm not, I am compassionate and
Right.
understanding, and I'm never going to ask you to do something that you're not comfortable doing. I will make suggestions.
Right.
I will ask if you're willing to be uncomfortable. We together will decide what the best course of action is, not me telling you what to do. I will
Right.
provide guidance, but that's about the extent of it. And so I think that, being able to have that conversation with somebody is an important piece of it.
Can I just interrupt and just say this, because I stress this too? It's like when you're going to look for surgeons, I say this with treatment, with everything, a green flag is going to definitely be, and I stress this with all my families looking at coaches or therapists, this is such a personal journey.
So personal.
And this is like such an investment in you that I don't want a green flag is you should be looking at you should be comparing and seeing where the chemistry is, how you feel.
Right.
And you will know it's a relationship. You will know if this is someone who's going to have an effect on you,
Right. For sure. Yeah. So that's what I would say. Anything else for me?
No,
I feel like we said so much.
We did, and there's so much more. Joelene Knight doesn't know this, you guys, but she will be a reoccurring guest on Connect Call. You will.
I told you I would.
I love this
I just
woman.
couldn't commit to doing it every week, but I will jump on anytime. I want to have like treatment Jeopardy where like the bad players all have to come on and answer to us.
Okay, let's do this. I mean, I'm down.
These are the allegations against you.
You know what I'd like to do? This is my secret passion. It's like in my dream, and I tell my wife this and some other people. Do you ever see the show Undercover Boss?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a great show. They have a horrible
Undercover rehab.
Let me explain. They have a horrible budget with costume and makeup most of the time, right?
Sure.
So my thing is I want to do Undercover Rehab where you get great actors, great costumes, great makeup, and you kind of go in and do the good work for the good people. Again,
Yeah.
I don't want to scare people from going to treatment. I don't want to scare people from getting the help they need. But I also want to
do
warn
your due diligence. Do your due diligence.
Due diligence. You know, I spoke about this a little bit, and I'm just going to say this. I spoke about this a little bit like when I was had my episode with my amazing mother whose daughter had survived the Parkland shooting. And at the time, what I learned about after tragedies like this is people want to stay close to their community, close to home. And what I saw were a lot of like vultures exploit that and come in and do more damage than good. So please, even if like your neighbor said, hey, so-and-so referred me, like do your due diligence. I also think a good thing for families to ask you or ask coaches is, do you have other families I can speak to that have worked with you that would speak on your behalf? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Joelene Knight, if you're lucky enough, I can't say enough. Please, you are the shit. And if I mean, I've tried to hire you as my coach, but you know, and you have coached me through so much. Last but not least, before we get off the phone, I always and like to say this because it's Connect Call. You are on the phone with a family, a loved one. If there's one thing you want that caller to hear from your conversation, because you're not going to maybe talk to them again, what's one lasting thing you want them to hear, to take away?
I mean, I guess it would be if your hope is reliant on another person changing. No, that's not true. I don't
Take a
know that.
moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's really what I want most families to walk away feeling is that they have some agency over their own lives. Their lives most of the time have been consumed by disruption and sadness and heartbreak. And a lot of times they're waiting for their said loved one to get it together, to get on with their lives.
Right.
And I really hope that the families I work with are able to have a life while coexisting with the sadness, the suffering, and the discomfort. That's really what my hope is.
Again, I'm not a parent, and I joke with my friends that these little people have hijacked your hearts and your schedules, travel sports. I don't even want to get into it. But I think what you just said is so important. And my mother didn't have the luxury of having a coach, but she tried so hard to be able to say, no matter what happens with Hannah, good or bad, I still have to have my own life, find my joy, find my happy, and, have a life outside of just being the mom of Hannah. You know what I mean?
Right.
And just,
I do.
and basically, so, but I love you. I can't wait to have
love you.
on again.
I love you.
Please, everyone, subscribe, download, Joelene Knight Consulting. All of her information will be on our show notes.
Was she?
All right. Thanks, Joe. I love you.
Thanks, Hannah. Okay.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Connect Call. As we conclude, remember that insights shared are intended for informational and educational purposes only and should not substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We strongly recommend consulting a qualified medical health professional or healthcare provider for personalized advice tailored to your unique needs. Your mental health journey is important, and having the right support is essential. If you're experiencing a mental health crisis or require immediate assistance, please reach out to a mental health provider or emergency services in your area. We're grateful to have you as part of our community, and your well-being remains our priority. So follow us on social media to stay connected, and be sure to catch one of our episodes on our YouTube channel. We're here to support you every step of the way.